The conference room smelled faintly of coffee that had been reheated too many times. The table was laminate, nicked at the edges, and cold against my forearms. A narrow window faced a brick wall, close enough that the light never quite reached the corners of the room. The HR partner slid the offer letter toward me without looking up. "He has a Harvard MBA," she said. "You'll understand." She said it the way people say weather happens, like it wasn't really anyone's fault. Just a condition, a fact of life. I didn't respond right away. I read the paper instead. Title: Years of Experience, compensation language written to sound fair without being specific. One line did all the talking. Aligned with internal equity guidelines. Internal equity, it turned out, meant I was making substantially less than the person I had trained 3 months earlier. Same title, less experience, fewer responsibilities, better pay. I folded the paper once, slowly, and set it down. I kept my voice even. "So this is final?" She nodded, eyes already drifting back to her checklist. "You can accept it, or you can leave." I remember noticing how quiet the room felt after that. No hum from vents, no hallway noise, just the soft click of her pen as she checked a box. I didn't argue. I didn't list the systems I'd designed or the weekends I'd spent fixing problems no one else saw until they were about to explode. I didn't raise my voice. I reached into my folder instead and took out a single page. I slid it back across the table. "This is my resignation," I said. "Effective today, 12:45 p.m. She froze. For the first time since I walked in, she actually looked at me. Not the paper. Me. "You don't have to decide right now," she said quickly. "We can talk to your manager, revisit this." I shook my head. "No, you were clear." At 12:47, my badge stopped working. At 12:52, my system access disappeared. I packed my desk the way I always did things, methodically. Keyboard first, notebook last. A few people glanced over their monitors and then looked away. No one said anything. I didn't expect them to. By the time I reached the elevator, my phone buzzed once and went silent. Slack signing off, email gone. I walked out into the parking structure and sat in my car without starting the engine. I wasn't angry. Mostly, I felt quiet. Settled. Like a decision I'd already made had finally caught up to the calendar. That's when my phone refreshed. The company status page changed colors. A yellow banner appeared at the top, investigating elevated error rates. I watched it for a moment, then set the phone face down on the passenger seat. I hadn't been on call in years without someone knowing it. And yet, for the first time in over a decade, no one was going to message me. I waited. I'd been with the company long enough to recognize that yellow banner for what it was. Not a crisis yet. More like the sound a building makes before something important gives way. I started the engine and pulled out of the garage slowly. It was early afternoon, the lot half empty, sunlight reflecting off windshields in that flat way it does after lunch. I didn't rush. There was nowhere I needed to be. On the drive home, I kept the radio off, just road noise and the occasional turn signal. My phone stayed face down. That wasn't discipline. It was habit. I'd learned a long time ago that reacting too early usually made things worse. I joined the company, different name back then, smaller office, almost 12 years earlier. Back when everyone knew where the servers were, not just which cloud region they lived in. Back when the founders still walked the floor during outages instead of waiting for summaries. I wasn't hired as anything special. Mid-level back-end engineer, solid, dependable, replaceable on paper. I came from a state school in western Pennsylvania, the kind people ask you to repeat because they've never heard of it. Before that, I spent 4 years maintaining radar systems on a Navy destroyer that never slept and didn't care if you were tired. That's where I learned how systems actually fail, not in clean diagrams, in cramped spaces, under pressure, with alarms going off for reasons no one expected. At the company, I gravitated toward the same kind of work. The messy parts, the stuff that didn't break often enough to get attention but broke badly when it did. Payment handoffs, inventory sync jobs, retry logic written by someone who'd left years earlier. People started looping me into things quietly. "Can you just take a look?" "Hey, this is weird. Does this ring a bell?" I never said no. I took notes, not for credit, for continuity, logs, timestamps, patterns. I kept a notebook at first, then a folder, then a system no one else ever really asked about. Titles changed around me, teams reorganized. New managers arrived with fresh frameworks and confidence that outpaced their familiarity with the code base. I stayed where I was, close to the plumbing. The company grew, went public, moved offices twice. Somewhere in there, compensation stopped tracking contribution and started tracking credentials. Business school names began to matter more than incident histories. The leadership program came next: rotations, visibility, early promotions. People with impressive resumes and very little patience for undocumented systems. One of them shadowed me for a while. Nice enough. Asked good questions, mostly about process, rarely about behavior under load. I answered what I could and went back to my work. I noticed his access expanded faster than his understanding. I noticed my pay didn't. I'd raised it once, carefully, during a review cycle, not emotionally, just numbers, market data, scope, responsibilities. It went nowhere. Another year passed, then another. By the time I parked in my driveway that afternoon, the yellow banner had turned orange. Identified issue. Some customers may be unable to complete transactions. I sat there for a moment with my hands on the steering wheel. The house was quiet. No lights on inside. Just the hum of the engine and a distant lawnmower somewhere down the block. I knew which service it was. I knew why it was failing. And for the first time since I could remember, I wasn't going to touch it. I turned off the car and went inside. I set my keys in the bowl by the door and washed my hands. Same routine I'd had for years. Water warm, soap, dry with the towel hanging on the left hook. The phone buzzed while it was still face down on the counter. I didn't look at it yet. I poured a glass of water and leaned against the kitchen counter, watching the light shift through the blinds. It was quiet in a way my afternoons usually weren't. No pings, no calendar reminders, no background sense of something waiting to break. When I finally picked up the phone, there were no direct messages, just the public feed. The status page had updated again. Payment processing degradation. Engineers actively investigating. I pictured the dashboards without seeing them. Queue depth climbing in steady steps. Latency stretching just enough to trip downstream timeouts. Retries piling on retries. A system designed to be resilient on slides, but fragile in sequence. There was one service at the center of it. Old, stable when handled correctly. Dangerous when restarted out of order. It required a pause between steps that wasn't documented anywhere official. Not because I was hiding it, but because every time I brought it up, it got deprioritized. Next quarter, someone would say. I'd written it down anyway, in my own records. Time, date, symptom, fix. 11 years of small, unglamorous truth. The first call came at 1:14 p.m., unknown number. I let it ring out. A minute later, a text from a former teammate. "Things are getting weird here," I replied with a single word. "Yeah." The second call came a few minutes after that. This one I recognized. The executive assistant, always composed, always efficient. I answered. "Can you talk?" she asked, already sounding out of breath. "I can listen," I said. "There's a situation," she said. "Payments are failing globally. Leadership wants to know if you're available." "I'm not," I said. There was a pause. Papers shuffling, voices in the background. "You just left," she said. "This is bigger than that." "It was always this big," I said. "It just hadn't broken yet." She lowered her voice. "Can you come back upstairs, just to advise? We'll figure out the rest." I looked at the clock on the microwave. 1:17. "I don't work there anymore," I said. "And I'm not consulting. You're the only one who understands that pipeline." "That was true this morning too," I said. She didn't respond right away. "I'll let them know," she said finally. After the call ended, I sat down at the kitchen table, pulled my old notebook from my bag and set it in front of me. The cover was worn soft at the edges, coffee stains, pencil marks. I didn't open it. The power shift wasn't dramatic. It didn't feel like leverage or revenge. It felt like gravity, something that had always been there, finally acting without resistance. At 1:22, the status page turned red. Major outage. Payment processing unavailable for most customers. I closed the browser and put the phone face down again. Then I waited. Waiting turned out to be the hardest part, not because I was tempted to intervene, but because my brain kept organizing the situation the way it always had. Step 1. Identify the failure mode. Step 2. Isolate the dependency. Step 3. Don't make it worse. I followed those steps even now, just without touching a keyboard. I made tea. The kettle clicked off with a dull snap. I carried the mug to the table and sat down, hands wrapped around it, letting the heat settle. Outside, a delivery truck idled and then moved on. Normal afternoon sounds continued like nothing unusual was happening anywhere. My phone buzzed again. This time, it didn't stop. Messages stacked up from numbers I hadn't heard from in years. Former teammates. An engineer who'd transferred to another org. Someone from operations who used to run point on incidents before everything got streamlined. I didn't answer any of them. Silence wasn't avoidance. It was a boundary. I'd learned the difference the hard way. At 1:38, the company-wide alert email hit inboxes. I knew because one of the engineers forwarded it to my personal address with no comment attached, just the subject line. SEV1, Global Payments Outage. I didn't open it. Instead, I opened my calendar. Not the old one. The new one. Tomorrow morning was blocked off for onboarding at my new job, a welcome meeting, access setup, introductions. That mattered more than whatever was happening now. Another call came through. Different number. This one I did answer. "Hey," the voice said. It was my former manager, tired, careful. "I know today was a lot." "I'm listening," I said again. "We're struggling," he said. "They're asking questions no one here can answer." "That's not new," I said, a sigh. "They want to know if there's any documentation we missed." "There isn't," I said. "Not in the places you're looking." "You kept personal notes," he said. Not a question. "I kept records," I said. "Those stayed with me." There was a longer silence this time. "What would it take?" he asked. I thought about that. Not emotionally, practically. "I don't want to be pulled back into an emergency created by a decision you told me to accept or leave," I said. "I chose leave." "So that's it?" he asked. "That's the rule," I said. "You defined it. I'm just following it." After we hung up, I stood and walked through the house slowly, straightened a chair, rinsed the mug, put it upside down on the rack. At 2:05 p.m., screenshots of the outage started circulating online. Broken checkout pages, empty carts, retailers replying to customers with apologies that said nothing and meant less. At 2:30, someone sent me a photo, a conference room, big screen, too many people, my name circled on a slide under system ownership. I set the phone down. The system was doing what systems do when neglected long enough. Teaching. The call came just after 5. I was sitting at the kitchen table again, this time with a folder open in front of me. Not company material, just my new hire paperwork, half completed, pen resting neatly along the margin. Ordinary things, grounding things. "Daniel," the voice said. "This is Mark Ellison, CFO." I recognized the name. We'd met once in passing. He'd shaken my hand without really looking at me. "I know today didn't go the way anyone expected," he continued. Calm, practiced. "We're facing a significant operational issue, and I wanted to see if there's a path forward where you can help us stabilize things." "As an employee?" I asked. "We're flexible," he said quickly. "Consulting, short-term, emergency rates." I let the silence stretch just long enough to be noticeable. "I start a new job tomorrow," I said. I was clear about that when I resigned. "Yes," he said, "we're aware. That happened. Fast." "It didn't," I said. "It just wasn't urgent to you until now." He exhaled slowly, like someone adjusting their tone. "We're prepared to be very reasonable." I looked at the clock. 5:19 p.m. "This isn't about reasonableness," I said. "It's about boundaries." "We're losing millions by the hour," he said. You were losing me by the year, I said. You just didn't notice because things kept working. He paused. I could hear muted voices on his end. Someone pacing, someone whispering numbers. What would it take for you to come in tonight? He asked. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't soften it either. I don't want your money, I said. I wanted to be paid fairly when I was responsible for keeping your systems alive. I wanted to not be told I should understand why credentials mattered more than outcomes. We can revisit. No, I said. That conversation already happened. You told me my options. I chose one. Another pause. If this outage continues, he said carefully, there will be consequences, regulatory, contractual. I documented those risks, I said, repeatedly. He didn't argue that. So this is final, he said. Yes. After the call ended, I sat there for a moment longer, phone still in my hand. Then I placed it face down and slid it across the table, away from me. At 6:02, the status page flickered back to orange. Partial service restoration. I knew what that meant too. A restart without understanding. A temporary fix, holding pressure against a deeper fracture. By 7:40, it failed again. This time, harder. Inventory sync broke alongside payments. Stock counts drifted, orders misaligned, support queues flooded. I didn't watch it unfold. I took a shower, changed clothes, set my alarm for the morning. Before bed, one last message came through. A former colleague, they're in a board meeting. Legal, execs, everyone. I replied once, I hope they're listening now. Then I turned the phone off and went to sleep. By morning, the situation had solidified into numbers. I didn't need inside access to know that. Numbers have a way of leaking out when they get big enough. Before I left for my first day at the new job, I turned my phone back on. There were no missed calls this time, just messages, screenshots, a forwarded news alert. Payment provider outage disrupts retailers nationwide. I read it once, then set the phone down and finished getting ready. Coffee, clean shirt, notebook in my bag. The normal weight of a normal day. At the new office, onboarding moved at a careful pace. Introductions, access badges, a quiet tour. No one rushed me. No one assumed I'd fix anything on day one. That alone told me I'd made the right decision. During lunch, another message came in. This one from an engineer I trusted. Board meeting notes, typed fast, time-stamped. I read them slowly. Questions about single points of failure, about undocumented dependencies, about why a critical payment system had been built and maintained by one person without redundancy. Someone asked why compensation reviews hadn't flagged risk. Someone else asked why leadership hires had been prioritized over retention. The numbers followed: estimated revenue loss, SLA penalties, emergency contractor fees, each line item clean and unemotional. By mid-afternoon, it was official. The outage had crossed a threshold where recovery no longer meant relief, just damage control. That evening, my phone rang once more. This time, I let it go to voicemail. The message was short, formal. They were initiating an internal review, external auditors, compliance notifications, customer outreach. My name came up more than once. 2 days later, a public update went out. Apologies, commitments, a promise to do better. A week after that, leadership changes were announced. Quiet resignations, statements about new directions. I wasn't mentioned. That was fine. The truth had already been documented, in timelines, in logs, in meeting minutes, in revenue reports no one could spin. The consequences didn't feel dramatic. They felt procedural, like gravity applied at scale. By the end of the month, the company was still operational. Smaller, more cautious, under scrutiny. I was somewhere else entirely, learning new systems, taking notes again, unnoticed in the best possible way. The lesson had landed, not through argument, through absence. A few months later, my evenings settled into a rhythm. I'd get home around the same time each day. Shoes by the door, bag on the chair. I'd straighten the kitchen without thinking about it, rinse a mug, wipe the counter once, the way I always had. Then I'd sit by the window with a cup of tea and let the day come to a close properly. The new job was steady, quiet in the right ways. When something broke, it was handled openly. When someone knew something important, they were listened to. No heroics, no hidden load-bearing people. One night, while organizing a drawer, I found the old notebook, the one I'd carried for years. I flipped through it slowly. Dates, short lines, small handwriting, patterns that only made sense if you'd been there when the alarms went off and everyone else froze. On the last page, I'd written a sentence the morning I resigned, not for anyone else, just to close the loop for myself. Systems fail in predictable ways. People fail when they stop listening. I closed the notebook and put it back where it belonged. A few weeks after that, I got an email from someone I used to work with, not asking for help, just saying thanks. Things were different now, slower, more careful. They'd added documentation, changed pay bands, built paths that didn't require titles or credentials to justify expertise. It didn't feel like a win, it felt like balance being restored. Every so often, I still hear similar stories, quiet ones, from people who keep things running and are told they should be grateful for stability. People who are asked to understand decisions that only ever seem to move one way. If you're one of them, you're not invisible, even if it feels that way for a while. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. It helps build a calm, thoughtful community here. And if you're watching, let me know in the comments what city you're in and what time it is right now. I like seeing how far these stories travel. 2 more popular stories are coming up next. Thanks for spending this time with me.